going to give a little bit of a background for this. So chapter 2 of the discourse talks about the concept of miracles, the concept of nature, and what constitutes the bigger miracle. Is it the miracle of creation, or is it the miracles of the Exodus? Because, as we know, when God introduces himself at Mount Sinai, God says, I am the Lord your God who took you out of the land of Egypt. And the question that every single commentary asks is, why is God introducing himself as the God of the Exodus and not as the God of creation? Why doesn't God trot out his greatest miracle of all time? That God should say, you know who I am? I am the Lord your God who created heaven and earth. Why does he go to what seemingly is a lesser miracle over what would be construed by most of us as the greatest miracle of all, creation? And commentaries say because God wanted to share something that he had done in the very recent past. The Exodus had just happened. They could relate to it. It was something that they experienced personally. Whereas creation we might take for granted. And all of these are wonderful answers. But they're not the Kabbalistic answer. Kabbalah gives another answer. And Kabbalah's answer is, well, hold on, not the answer, but to establish the question. I mean, the seemingly we would say that the act of creation is greater than the act of the Exodus. Why? Because every miracle of the Exodus was transforming one thing into another thing, whereas creation is transforming nothing into something. Now, you tell me, or I ask you, if I was a lawyer in court on a dramatic show. Now, tell me, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, right? You tell me, which is greater, to turn something and to turn one something into another something, or to create something out of absolutely nothing? The latter. In which case, Kabbalah asks the question. I understand that the people had experienced the Exodus. I understand that it was fresh in their memory. I understand that as slaves, they would have perhaps more gratitude for the Exodus than they would for the notion of creation, which they could take for granted. I get that. But turning a staff into a snake, turning water into blood, and turning liquid water into a solid wall, all of that is something that turns into something else. But creation is something from abject nothingness. And it seems like if God is introducing himself at the opening of the Ten Commandments, God should have said, you know who I am? As God gets pulled over. Do you know who I am? I'm kidding. Do you know who I am? I am the Lord your God who created heaven and earth. That seems to be the ace in the deck. I think I'm messing up a phrase here because I'm not a card player, but that seems to me, ace in the hole, ace in the deck, whatever it is. That seems to be the thing that God should trot out. Let's take a look at our text, and I know again we're doing this a little bit differently. We're jumping straight into the text. I want to close out chapter 2 so that we can get into chapter 3 and begin with a new discussion. Hey Sandrine, good to see you. Okay, so let me open this up on my end, and let's jump in. What we're going to do is jump into where it says cause and effect. And in this part of the text, the Rebbe, this is the previous Rebbe. The previous Rebbe is questioning his question because he's saying, well, one second. Maybe when it comes to the miracles of the Exodus, something from something, meaning turning water, let's say, into blood, maybe it is just like something from nothing. Because there was no blood. It's not like the water actually turned into blood. It's God created blood out of water, which means that it's kind of something from nothing, because water is not a precursor to blood. If that makes sense. Yeah? All right. So here we go. So he continues to say by cause and effect. This something from something, the something from something of the Exodus miracles, is different than the something from something of cause and effect. Cause and effect would be, for example, when you meditate on something cognitively, intellectually, and from that emotions are produced. So we consider that to be also cause and effect. Ila va'alul, cause and effect. Right? I was thinking about something and then I got excited about it. Or I was thinking about something and then I got afraid. I became fearful about it. Right? So either I developed love or fear or compassion or anxiety or jealousy, whatever it is, if an emotion is produced from something ruminating in our minds, that is what we call cause and effect. The cause is the cognitive experience or rumination. The effect is the emotional response. But he says the idea of the concept of turning water into blood is different than an emotion being born of a cognitive experience. Why? In the latter case, which means in the case of the intellect that produces emotions, the cause does not turn into the effect. The cause merely generates the revelation of the effect. And he gives the example that I just gave of intellect and emotions. In the case of intellect and emotions, for example, intellect is the cause, meaning that's the catalyst for the birth of the emotion, and emotions, the effect. But he clarifies, the intellect in this case does not become emotions. It's not like your brain becomes a heart. It's not like your ideas become feelings. Your ideas give birth to ideas, and that's something completely different. You see the difference? The idea doesn't become an emotion. It gives rise to an emotion. Let's continue. Last two words on page 42. The intellect, and then we turn the page now. The intellect, 44, causes the revelation of an emotion, which is a separate entity. So here's the idea, and we spoke about this a few weeks ago. Emotions and ideas are two different worlds. Two different worlds. Now, can one birth the other? Absolutely, but it doesn't mean that one turned into the other. Does that make sense, what I just said? It's not like the idea transformed into an emotion. The idea gave birth to an emotion. But the emotion remains a separate reality. Let's continue. The same is true of the something from something with an intellect itself. I added the word itself. I.e., when from one concept another is derived. That's another form of something from something or cause and effect. Imagine, let's pause for a moment. Imagine you're thinking about a concept and you have a chap. Chap is Yiddish for, how do you translate chap? Chap means grab, it does mean grab, but in this context it means you chap, suddenly you realize something. It's like, wow, aha, I got something. You chap something, it means you grab something in your mind. And you realize this thing that I've been thinking about, good morning, good to see you, welcome. We need a bell for first-time Kabbalah Cafeers. We don't have that. So virtual bells going off. Greg, welcome. Come on in. Okay, here. Give the young man a copy. All right, so imagine you're thinking about an idea and you suddenly chap something. Wait a second. This explains another idea. Or I just had a thought about one idea. Now I have another idea that is branching off of this idea. Okay, so he says the first concept. This is, again, 1, 2, 3 lines down from the second paragraph on 44. The first concept does not become the second concept. The second concept, which is generated from the first, is a separate entity. It's just that its emergence occurs through the first concept. Again, the first concept births a second concept, but does not become the second concept. This is very, very important. If your ideas, I like the example of the ideas and the feelings a little bit better because I think it's a little bit cleaner and clearer. An idea, imagine, okay, let's give a practical example. This is a very mundane example and it's not a great example, but it is what it is. Imagine because like in Kabbalah, it's going to speak about love of God. Think about how God's kindness and how God's, compassion for you and God's giving you breath this morning, and then you can't help but love God, and that's the whole purpose of the prayers. Like we could do that, but let me give you a more mundane example. You're looking to buy a car. Very different than the example Kabbalah would give. So imagine you're looking to buy a car, and you research cars, and you look, and you're looking, and you're researching this, that, you have different factors, and you realize, wow, this car, whatever this car is the perfect car for you. And suddenly, it moves from an idea, wow, this is a good car, to I want this car. There's a difference. One is, this car makes sense for me, but then it shifts into, I want this car. I have a desire for this car. Now, I'm not saying that you have ever had this or should have this, but it's possible that one could have this. A desire for a possession, for something. Like, I want this. Not only is this good intellectually, but now I have an emotional tug toward it. Has it ever happened that someone purchased something as a result of an emotional tug toward a thing? It's happened, right? It's happened before. Whether it's a car or whether it's something else, it's happened. So imagine this is you. Imagine you're feeling an emotion now toward this object. Great. Did the idea become an emotion? Is that what happened? Do you no longer have an idea anymore about the goodness or about the benefit of the car because all you have now, it has transformed into emotion, much like, let's say, the Nile River turning into blood. There's no more water anymore, right? It's just blood. Would you say that there's no longer an idea of the benefit? You no longer can rationalize the idea about the benefit of the car because it's all emotion? Of course not. The idea is the idea, the emotion is the emotion. One gave rise to the other. But it's a different reality. It's like a birthing an emotion, but it's not that the idea became an emotion. Yes? Good. Same idea when one idea births another idea or branches out into another idea. It's not that the one idea changed into the second idea, but rather it gave rise. It birthed another idea. Let's get back inside. This is all very important. Not so, he says, third paragraph on 44, in the case of the something from something of the miracles of the Exodus. Here, the substance of the staff became the substance of a snake. It's not that the staff gave birth to a snake, and the staff was here and the snake was there. No, the staff became a snake. Let's continue. And the substance of the water became the substance of blood. It's not like you had a Nile River that remained water, and in addition, there was a layer of blood onto the side. It's not what happened. The whole thing changed into blood. Let's continue. Likewise, in the case, he now goes through the three examples that he's been talking about of the miracles. Likewise, in the case of the water that turned into a wall during the splitting of the sea, the change occurred in the divine energy that creates that very being. Let me explain what that means. It's not that the water remained flowing and then there was a wall that just kind of slapped over on top of it. No, the water changed from liquid into solid, which means the energy of the very water that was flowing is no longer liquid, it's now solid. That very water is now solid water. Now, it doesn't make sense, unless we call it ice, but it doesn't make sense, and yet that's what happened. But the point is, it's not that the water produced a wall, the water became, took on the properties of a wall. Let's continue. If so, and this is his dagger, the argument dagger, if so, these miracles, staff into a snake, water into blood, water turning into a wall, are similar to the creation of something from nothing. Why? Because in both cases, nothing preceding it would make any sense for it to be what it is now. That was not a coherent sentence. Nothing that preceded it could have anticipated what it has now become. Water is not blood. It's not the same thing. So for water to turn into blood is akin to something arising from nothing, because water doesn't precipitate blood. So it's not like, oh, I could trace it. Water, 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 blood. Makes sense. It doesn't make sense. So if now there's blood. Where did it come from? The water? Blood can't come from water. So you know what we call it? Basically something from nothing. Yeah, but you say, but there wasn't nothing. There was water. Yeah, but water doesn't help blood emerge. Now, an idea can help birth an emotion, and that's fine. But water doesn't precipitate blood. It's not a thing that, or a staff doesn't produce a snake. So for the staff to turn into a snake, that's basically something from nothing. A snake from nowhere. No, it came from a staff. That's not a thing. That's basically nowhere. Therefore, he's questioning his question. The whole question was, why doesn't God introduce himself as the creator of heaven and earth? Because that's the greatest miracle. He's now saying, well, maybe the Exodus is the same level. Maybe the Exodus miracles are also something from nothing, just like creation, and therefore it makes sense that God said, you know who I am? I created heaven and earth. He says no. He says no. And this is why no. The truth is, however, this will take us to the end of chapter 2, and then we'll begin chapter 3 with a brand new introduction and brand new concepts. The truth is, however, that our master, Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi, the founder of Chabad, the author of his seminal work called Tanya, his soul is in Eden, comes to the conclusion in the second chapter of the second part of Tanya that the creation of heaven and earth, notwithstanding everything we said, is a greater miracle than the splitting of the sea. You can tell me that the wall came out of nowhere, or the blood came out of nowhere, or the snake came out of nowhere. You can tell me that, but it's the creation of heaven and earth is still a greater miracle. Now, he doesn't explain why. All he's saying is, what can we do? He seems to be saying, our hands are tied, because the Alter Rebbe already said the creation of heaven and earth is the greatest miracle of all. Question is why? So here's footnote 48. I may have written this footnote. I don't remember. It's been a while. You ready? Let's read this. Footnote 48. The reason for this, this is on page 45, bottom right corner. The reason for this explained in the discourse entitled Chodesh in 5679, that's an earlier discourse, is because with regards to the miracle of Egypt, both entities, the original and the newly transformed, were in existence prior to the miracle. Sticks and snakes, water and blood, all of these elements existed previously in the world. Likewise, the second element's new nature also existed previously. When the sea split and stood like a wall, the water acquired the previously existent nature of a rigid wall, meaning water exists, walls existed, staffs existed, snakes existed, water existed, blood existed. Everything already existed. As Rabbi Shneur Zalman writes there in Tanya, for a stone wall stands erect, i.e., such is its created, already existent nature. The miracle lies in the fact that water, naturally free-flowing, acquired an entirely different nature, that of a wall, but the water did not acquire a nature that never existed. The miracle of creation, however, is that from nothing there should emerge something for the first time. This then is a greater miracle. So in conclusion, not of the chapter but of that footnote, why is creation, why is the act of creation a greater miracle than the act of turning water into blood? Basically, because there was never anything before it that should exist. Yes, when you turn water into blood, the blood's coming out of nowhere, right? It's something from nothing. But you know what? Blood already exists. It's already been created. But the act of creation for the very first time, when God first created heaven and earth, everything came into being from nothing. Nothing had ever existed. So that will always be the greatest form of miracle possible. The very first, yesh mi'ayin, the very first, something from nothing, from actual nothing. Don't tell me that blood from water is something from nothing because the blood wasn't here, there was just water. But blood exists. It's not really something from nothing. It's sort of. It's very, myopically something from nothing. In this context, there wasn't blood, now there is blood. But the whole concept, water, blood, sticks, snakes, right, sticks and stones, right, everything exists already. You know what doesn't exist in the beginning? Anything. When God first creates heaven and earth, that's always going to be the greatest miracle, which then finally circles back to our question, and with this we conclude chapter 2. Let's read this question. Top of page 46, back inside, not in the footnotes anymore, but in the top of the page, 46. If so, if creation is the greatest miracle of all time, why does it say, I am the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt, and not, I am the Lord your God who created heaven and earth, which is a greater miracle, it would seem. As though God should put forth his greatest accomplishment. Imagine if you're applying for a job, and you have a resume, right? You would think, what are you going to put in the resume? Your greatest hits, your greatest accomplishment. You're going to put the second best thing you did, you would put the best thing you did. Imagine you work for a company and you earned the company $1 billion in business. And you also delivered newspapers. I'm sorry for whatever. What are you going to put in there, right? The newspaper part or the $1 billion part? You'll put the $1 billion. God created heaven and earth. He also, turned sticks into snakes. Why not pull out the biggest piece, the biggest miracle? You would think. Good. Question makes sense? Great. Now we can forget about that and move on to chapter 3. This you should know. You should know. And I wrote this again in footnote. Let's do the footnote. Okay. I like my foot. By the way, in case anyone's wondering why I'm saying I wrote the footnote, if you look at the cover of what you're reading, you'll see there, translation, additional annotation by me. This is one of the projects I worked on back in my Brooklyn days. So hence the self-reference here. Take a look at footnote number 49. And this is how we'll conclude chapter 2. At the conclusion of chapter 2, we remain with the same issue raised at the conclusion of chapter 1. Which is greater, Nisan or Tishrei? Right, there's 2 firsts of the year. There's the first month of the calendar year, right? 5786 began Rosh Hashanah, Tishrei. But then we say that The month of Nisan, the Torah says, is the first of the months of the year. HaChodesh Lechem, Rosh Chadashim, Rishon Hu Lechem L'Chad Shesha. It's the first of the months of the year. So we have two firsts, which is greater. Because, we can't help but ranking things. You can't tell me there's two firsts and not have us desire to put one above the other. So which is greater? Nisan or Tishrei? Nisan is about Exodus. Tishrei about creation. So which is greater, Exodus or creation? In this context, we just ask the same question. Why does God introduce himself as the God of the Exodus and not the God of creation? It would seem that creation is better. Why is the first of the months Nisan with the Exodus? It seems like Tishrei, creation is better. Same question. Same question, two different ways of asking. One is technical with the months. Why did it switch? Why did the first month of the year, why did God change it to the month of Nisan? Why didn't God make the Exodus in the month of Tishrei? That was how I know chapter 1 was like a month and a half ago, but that was what we did in chapter 1. Chapter 2 asked the same question, different angle. Why does God introduce himself as the God of the Exodus and not the God of creation? It seems again that creation supersedes Exodus.
But with turning the water into blood,
yes,
that allowed you to escape.
Correct.
It's much more personal than.
I got it. Commentaries answer that, exactly. So many, many, many commentaries give that very answer. God was speaking personally to the audience. You got to know your audience, know what they care about, know what they feel, or know how they feel, and therefore if God is speaking to this band of very recently freed slaves, what he's going to tell them is, I took you out. Now let's talk. Let me establish the rationale for me telling you what to do. Because if not for me, you would be back in Egypt anyway. So might as well listen to me. It's like a mother who tells the child, I brought you into this world. Right. Yeah, no, I'm kidding. That's we're not threatening. No, God doesn't threaten, but he does. I didn't want to finish the statement, but that would be the rest of the statement. Thank you. But right, it would be I took you out of Egypt. Can we deal here? Can we play? I have 10 commandments. Are you okay with that? Are you sure? Remember, I took you out of Egypt. It's kind of so yes, it's also more emotionally relevant to them. I get all of that. What you're saying is 100% true. But Kabbalistically, we're still stuck with this question. Which is the greater miracle? Which is the greater act? The act of creation or the act of Exodus? Great. Chapter 3. Chapter 3 begins with a conversation. You don't have, if you're wondering, you don't have chapter 3 because I have a second stack that looks identical to the first. That is now chapter 3 and 4. But hold on. Let's do this in a way that's going to work. Before we pass that around, let me take back, unless you want to keep it. Yeah. If you want to keep it, you can keep it. But if you don't, I'd rather it not get very confusing for me because I'm going to be collecting these at the end for next week. And then I'm going to be mixed up with two identical. I know I could have changed the cover, but I did not for the sake of confusion. So let's do this. I got the chapter 2s back. Chapter 1s and 2s are going to be tucked away over here. This is also chapter 1 and 2, tucked away over here. And now I have chapter 3, which I will not pass out yet. Because I have another handout, additional readings to pass out. It's all going to make sense. Before I pass this around, I need to present, and I wrote it in the email late last night, but I need to present the conundrum that the mystics deal with a lot. And that is, how does definition emerge in a world bathed in divine oneness? I understand that on the money it says e pluribus unum, which means from many one, but how do you go the opposite way around? How do you go from one to many? How does a one God produce diversity? How does a one singular God, Hashem Echad, Yachid, Chei Ha'olamim, how do you go from oneness, singularity, essential singularity? How do you go from that to plurality, diversity, divergence, shape, definition? How does it work? To put in other terms, how does spiritual energy ever materialize into something physical? Think about it. You study a little bit of Kabbalah and it talks about the four worlds. Atzilut, Bria, Yitzira, Asiyah. 2 levels of Asiyah, Asiyah HaRuchnit, Asiyah HaGashmit. You have all these different dimensions. Emanation, world of creation, world of formation, world of action, the spiritual world of action, and the physical world of action. All great, wonderful. Wonderful. And that's how energy evolves and devolves until it becomes this. And then I might ask the following question that is going to be very difficult to answer. At which point and how does a transition happen between spiritual and physical? Let me give you an example. Let's say you close your eyes. You don't have to. Let's say you close your eyes and you picture, I'm going to go back to my prior example, an automobile. And you don't just picture it vaguely, like an outline or a sketch, but you picture it in detail. And you picture it with all of its details. The color of the paint and the sparkling, they put like little metallic flakes in it to sparkle, or they don't. And it becomes that flat color that's been popular in the last few years. Looks like it's straight out of a cartoon, right? And then you think about how, the lines of the car work and how, I'm not even in the market for a car. I don't know why I'm thinking about a car. Anyway, so you picture it, and you picture the inside, you picture the outside, you picture the top, you picture the back, you picture the side, the doors open, you picture everything. And it's so real and vivid. Let me ask you a question. Did you produce a car? As vivid as it is, it's still not a car. You wrote a book, and you created characters that were so real and so alive. Let me ask you a question. Did they jump off the page in reality? No. Spiritual energy is spiritual energy. You tell me that, but the energy gets, symptom, it gets contracted, it gets, But how does it cross over into something physical? It's still spiritual energy. How does that happen? And getting back to the way I phrased the question initially, if all energy flowing through all of reality is God's singular oneness energy, Hashem Echad energy, then what causes the differentiation between two things? What differentiates between you and I? Between this table and that table, between this hand and that hand? What constitutes the separation? Where does that come from? And so the mystics spend countless pages on this very conundrum. In fact, it's probably the biggest topic in Kabbalah. At least one of the biggest topics in Kabbalah is figuring out how we got here. And you can say simplistically, well, God created it. God can do anything. And that's great. But Kabbalah tries to understand the mechanics of it. And not for the sake of an academic query of like, what are the spiritual mechanics of it? But in a sense to better understand their universe, which then will lead to better understand our world and our space and our place in the universe. And drive us forward in our avodah, in our divine service. This is not Kabbalah 101 or Kabbalah abstract or whatever it is. This is Kabbalah that's geared to a practical end. And can I just comment and take a break from everything I'm saying and say how grateful I am for the air conditioning working? Do you notice that it's working?
Summertime.
What is happening here?
We're not talking about it.
We just did, and I may have jinxed it, but this is incredible. Right? This system officially does not work.
It works on its own accord, I think. That's what happened. So,
I'm going to say this. Someone has to figure out how to turn it on because it works. It works. Okay, to be continued. We'll drop the air conditioning conversation. We'll pick up the Kabbalah conversation. Maybe air conditioning can also be mystical. You never know. Comfortable people studying Kabbalah is definitely a positive. So getting back to the big idea here, how does oneness turn into diversity? What creates the shape? What creates the differentiation? What creates the very concept of definition? Because, by the way, definition, by definition, means separation. Think about it. When you give a definition to something, you're saying as much what it is as you're saying what it's not. Think about it. When you define something, you're saying it's this, meaning it's not that. So the moment it's this, then it's not that, it's not everything, it's not oneness, it's not totality, it's not singularity, it's just this. Where does that come from? Kabbalah explains that all of this comes from the interplay between two divine names, Havaya and Elokim. Havaya is the Kabbalistic way of expressing the four-letter name of God that is the ineffable name, the Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, the name that we don't pronounce the way it's written. And Elokim is the name, the second most popular name. Sounds like a contest. The second most popular, or BuzzFeed article, the second most popular name in the Torah is Elokim. And it's also the first name used in the Torah in Genesis, in Bereshit. Bereshit bara Elokim. In the beginning, Elokim. Now we translate it as God or the Lord, depending on who the translator is and what they were having for breakfast that morning. But you translate as you translate it. It doesn't really make a difference. God, Lord, whatever. Just don't call him late for breakfast. So the idea is that the names are used, and that they switch back and forth, and they're used significantly to indicate these two realities. Havaya is the name that bespeaks or that evokes oneness and singularity. God beyond definition. In fact, Havaya is a bit of an acronym for Haya, Hoveh, V'yihye Ke'echad. He was, he is, and he will be at the same time. Past, present, and future as one. Now, for you and I, that doesn't even make sense. Past, present, and future at the same time? Or, I don't even know if we should use the word time. At the same? How's that possible? For us, it's very defined. There's a moment before and a moment after, and each one has its definition, and it's distinct. It's not the same thing. What was is not what is, and what is not what will be. So what does that mean? Guess what? You and I can't fathom that. We exist in a world of definition. We don't exist in a world of undefinition, in a world of apparent singularity, even if there is singularity underlying everything, we don't see it. That's not the space that we operate in. That's not the cognitive, that's not the perceptive space that we operate in. So we can't even relate to that. But getting back to my point, Havaya bespeaks this concept, or evokes the concept of divine singularity, beyond definition. Past, present, future is one, meaning it's beyond definition. Elokim is Hateva. Same numerology, 86. Elokim is nature. Hateva means, in the translation of Hateva, means the sandal. I'm kidding. You know Teva sandals? Mm-hmm. I should probably telegraph my jokes better or tell better jokes. Teva. Teva's also, isn't Teva also now a company of pharmaceuticals? That's what it is. Pharmaceuticals. Is it Israeli? Is it Israeli? Yes. Teva Israeli? So Teva, but it's a different company. It's also the sandal, the shoes, but it's a different company.
Teva Naot is the shoes, and Teva Pharmaceuticals is Teva Pharmaceuticals.
How did they come up with the name Teva Pharmaceuticals for pharmaceuticals? I'm kidding.
Way before.
It was way before. And they probably make more money. They used to. Interesting. All right. But Hateva that we're speaking of is not a shoe company, nor is it a pharmaceutical company. It is the company of reality, meaning it is definition itself, stems from Elokim. What I want to do is take a few moments. These are the Georgia Tech students that are here today. We have Georgia Tech students right behind me that are coming in for a meet and greet and a tour. They go to the mikvah and check it out. They go to the shul and check it out. They have some breakfast and check it out. And it looks like they're here. Okay, they do it every year. You guys ready for this?
Yes.
This is the trippiest stuff. If you want to learn trippy Kabbalah, just read the second part of Tanya. In fact, the Alter Rebbe was going to put this as the first part of Tanya, but he said, I'm paraphrasing, this is a bit trippy. Let's put it as the second part of Tanya. So hence it's part 2. It's chapter 3 of the second part of Tanya. If it's getting to the point in this room where people have to put on a jacket, I'm getting such nachas. I cannot tell you how I'm very nispal today. This is, talk about yesh me'ayin, something from nothing. This, whatever's happening right now, is like, if you walked in earlier today, it was a swamp in here. It was like very like, it was a little warm. It wasn't hot, but it was like a little like humid and whatever it is. This is, I don't know what's happening, but I like it. Okay, let's go. This is fantastic. All right, what I'm going to do here is read. Okay? I have to tell you, this is not the easiest stuff, meaning it's not basic, it's powerful. And because it's powerful, we're reading it. So if not everything makes 100% sense, okay, I'm going to try to explain it. If you have any questions, reach out to my agent, and we'll answer it. Okay, I have this pulled up over here so I can read it on my screen and share it as well. So let's jump in. What I did was I pulled from the original translation of Tanya. I am going to, which means that it's a little bit literal and a little bit long sentences, and because in the original there are no periods, so the translator's like, okay, I guess we should just follow that theory and just write really long sentences. So here we go, let's jump in. Chapter 3, this is supplementary text for chapter 3 of our text, which we're about to begin. The title of this discussion is, Does Creation Really Exist? And I know what you're thinking. We are here, aren't we? To which I'll ask, are you sure we're here? Oh, that's Rabbi Sharfstein. Are you sure that we're here? How sure are you that you are here? Okay, let's jump in. Now, following these words and the truth concerning the nature of creation. Now let me pause here for a moment and explain what are these words and what is the truth that he has already dropped on us. Well, he's already dropped on us the truth that creation is something that is constant and ongoing from God. That it wasn't just created once upon a time and it's running on its own. Creation is like a light projector projecting a film onto a screen. And I point over here simply because there is a screen that can drop down from that ceiling. And imagine if we had a projector that was projecting onto that screen and we would see a video, maybe a film of the preschool, end of year situation, slideshow video, right? And then it would look real. It would look like a video. And then you would pull the plug on the projector and it would stop. The image only exists so long as the light is constantly being projected. Let's continue. If that's the case, every intelligent person in the second line will understand clearly that each creature and being is actively considered not an absolute nothingness in relation to the activating force and the breath of his mouth, which is in the created thing, continuously calling it into existence and bringing it from absolute non-being into being. It's a long sentence, but what does he mean? What do you think he means? He means that if a thing, all things, but let's focus on one, if a thing only exists because God is projecting it into being, then how real is the thing versus the source that's projecting it into being? What's actually real in this case? What's the reality? Is it the thing that's being projected or that which is projecting it into being? But if I tell you that the moment I pull the plug on the projector, that thing that looked so real is gone, then you might say, that doesn't exist. There's no kid there. There's no kid on the actual screen. It's all the light. It's all the projection from the source. So then that's not even real. In recent years, this is already going back like 15 years, they created technology to project 3D holograms on concert stages. I think Tupac was the first one they did that with. Tupac, the rapper who was murdered years ago, right?
96.
Yeah, so they had there was a concert. They played his music, and there he's dancing and singing. And they did that with, who did they do that with? Who? Oh, ABBA. Nice, did that. Elvis, although Elvis, I don't think you have to do that because I think he's still around, still alive. Kidding.
So it's two.
Also, maybe. No, but Elvis is the same letters as Lives.
And if you play the record backwards, it's the Beatles.
Satanic stuff. All right. What was that, 70s? 80s? What decade was there the satanic panic? Yeah. We all turned out okay. The world's fine, right? Is it though? Is it though? All right, back to the story. Imagine you're at a concert, and the concert is a 3D hologram concert, and it's like the coolest thing. Oh my God, unbelievable! It's like 3D hologram. And then there's a power outage, and then you realize Tupac is not really with us. It was all a computer. It was all a simulation. Ooh, talking about simulation theory. Wow. All right, let me back off that word for a quick second. You realize it's all a projection. So what's real? Is the image real? It's projected to appear real, but what is its real substance? The source light that's projecting it into being. If that's the case, and if that's the truth of our created reality, meaning everything you and I see, I don't know what I'm doing here, a weird dance, pinching myself, yes, I feel alive, but if this is also, if I am also, but a projection of God, that appears real but is really God's projection, so then what's the real reality of my reality? Me or God? God. Let's continue. The reason that all things created and activated appear to us, bless you, appear to us as existing and tangible. You see what he says appears to us? It's not even real. The reason why it looks like it exists and is tangible is that we do not comprehend nor see with our physical eyes the power of God and the breath of his mouth, which is in the created thing, meaning you and I don't see that there's a projector right back there. All we see is the image, and the projector never goes out or has chosen not to go out. So we're like, oh, after a while we take the 3D hologram as reality. It's like, oh, that's real. Because we don't see that it's all a projection. If, however, the eye were permitted to see, and not only to see, but and to comprehend, meaning to really get the life force and spirituality, which is in every created thing, flowing into it from that which proceeds out of the mouth of God and his breath, then the materiality, the grossness, meaning the tangibility of the created world would not be seen by our eyes at all, for it is completely nullified in relation to the life force and the spirituality which is within it, since without the spirituality it would be not an absolute nothingness, exactly as before the 6 days of creation. That's a long sentence again. But what's he saying? The only reason why we take any of this seriously and believe we exist is because we don't see the source. If we saw the source, or we saw the source flowing into everything that exists, we would say, that's real, this is not real. That's what we would say. The whole fabric, structure of reality would collapse under the weight of truth. And we would say, Ein od milvado, there's nothing other than God. That's all there is just God. Pure, spiritual, divine reality. That's it. Make sense?
You know, it's very interesting that, there's some physicists that are incredibly smart that look at wherever, Princeton, and they have that theory that this is all just a hologram. And it's proven by their math that...
Maybe they got it from Kabbalah.
But that's now...
Right. This is very ancient. Let's continue. The spirituality which flows into it, meaning into creation, from that which proceeds out of the mouth of God and his breath, that alone continuously brings it forth from naught and nullity into being and gives it existence. Hence, Ein od milvado be'emet. There is truly nothing besides him. Let's pause for a moment. I said before that Kabbalah, real Kabbalah, authentic Kabbalah, is not abstract. It's not about understanding the mechanisms of creation for the sake of writing a thesis about it. It's about driving us to be better people. So how does this fit into this? I know we're still in the middle of it. I can't hold myself back. Imagine if you took yourself a little less seriously. I don't mean in that way, but I mean imagine if you got less offended when someone stepped on your shoe by accident, because you realized that all you are and all they are is the same projection of divine energy. The world will be a little bit of a better place, I think. A little less angry, a little less volatile. It's like the perception that the astronauts have when they're looking at the Earth from outer space, it's like, wow, and we're fighting? This little space, and we're fighting over it? But this is, I think, even more remarkable. This is not looking from outside in. This is looking with it through a different lens altogether. This is saying, who am I really? What am I really? If I'm cutting a cucumber and I make a mistake and I nick my finger, am I going to take one hand and punch the other hand? Is that my reaction? It'd be meshuggah to do that. It's all part of the same body. It's all part of the same energy. So what are we really doing? We're in all the faribbles, which is a great Yiddish word for, the fighting. Like where's all this coming from? Where's all this hatred, animosity, fighting coming from? Where's it coming from? It's coming from an illusion of distinction, of definition, of this is my space. How dare you, in your space, encroach on my space? Welcome to the world of definition. In a world of Kabbalah, in a world seen through this lens, where everything is Abisha, everything is God, and it's all the light flowing it's all light projections flowing into to create this supposed reality. Everything changes. That's the outcome. That's the avodah. That's the practical outcome. To take the substance a little bit less concretely. Let's continue. And now he gets into a parallel, an illustration of this, because this is such a deep concept. So he gives an illustration. An illustration of this is the light of the sun, which illumines. And I don't know why the word illumine is used here, because typically people would say illuminate, which illuminates the earth and its inhabitants. So let's pause for a moment. I want you to picture this. That's what he's trying to get us to meditate on this a little bit, to get our minds wrapped around this very deep concept. This mind-bending, mind-altering, reality-shifting, reality-altering concept. That's where she's trying to get us into this space. So he gives an example of the sun. Imagine for a moment. Just picture this. Picture the earth, right? Picture that blue dot, the pale blue dot, right? Picture that. And picture the sun illuminating the earth. Let's continue. This illumination is the radiance and the light. Let me pause here for a moment. This illumination on earth is the radiance and the light which spreads forth from the body of the sun and is visible to all as it gives light to the earth and the expanse of the universe. Now it is self-evident that this light and radiance is also present in the very body and matter of the sun globe itself in the sky. For if it can spread forth and shine to such a great distance, then certainly it can shed light in its own place. Let me explain. Every light is a flow, right? Light moves that's the speed of light, right? Right? It's flowing, it's moving. It starts off in this context, it starts off in the sun. That's the source of luminescence. It is radiating this light, right? The warmth, this light, this warmth is radiating from the sun. And imagine you followed. Imagine if you could follow one ray of light as it emanates from the source and extends all the way to come in through a window to cast a little bit of light in a room. You followed it from the beginning. So you got to have a very quick camera movement, but you follow from the source all the way to earth. Did that light exist previously in its source? Yes. Of course, it's coming out. It's projecting. It's almost like, maybe easier to picture example, you're outside, you're in the woods, you're camping, and you have a flashlight, right? And you turn on your flashlight. It's pitch black. You turn on the flashlight, and suddenly it illuminates. Well, what's going on? There's a bulb, right, in your flashlight, and it's projecting light. It's starting from inside and it's projecting outward. That's how it works. Correct? That's projecting outward. Great. The light that's projecting onto the tree. The actual light that you see, you're shining a light bulb shining the flashlight on a tree, you see the tree is illuminated now. The illumination, the light on the tree, you know where it began? In the flashlight in your hand. It's not like it just appears over there. It's coming, it's projecting outward. The moment you turn it off, it's dark. Why? Because it's no longer projecting. So it's projecting constantly, constant projection, constantly pulsing out, shooting out waves of light, constantly, to illuminate the thing, the tree. But the illumination on the tree is coming from the flashlight. In the way he describes it here, because this is a world before flashlights. Can you imagine? There were suns. Who thinks about the sun anymore? So the sun, the light of the sun begins in the sun itself. Now let's continue. However, last paragraph, there in its own place, meaning within the orb of the sun, this radiance is considered not in complete nothingness. For it is absolutely non-existent in relation to the body of the sun globe, which is the source of this light and radiance, inasmuch as this radiance and light is merely the illumination which shines from the body of the sun globe itself. I'm going to explain this in a second. It is only in the space of the universe under the heavens and on the earth where the body of the sun globe is not present that this light and radiance appears to the eye to have actual existence. He says, imagine if you could trace back this ray of light to its source. And then think about the value of this one ray of light in the source relative to the entire orb of the sun. You would say that it's insignificant. This one little ray of light compared to the totality, it's like, it's garnished. It's not, it's got zero, it's infinitesimal. It's like, it's nothing compared to the large piece. When does it become chashuv? When does it become prominent? It's only when it travels all the way away from the sun, and now it comes to a dark space, and now it shines into your window, and it transforms your room into a light room. Wow! Look at the light coming in. Yeah, but that light in its source was nothing. It's only when it's away from the source now it begins to take some prominence. Let's continue. Sorry. Look, not even take some prominence. I want to reread the last line over there. It's only when it extends from the sun itself, this top paragraph on the second half of the page, it's only then that this light and radiance appears to the eye to have actual existence. He doesn't say prominence, I misspoke. It's that it appears to have actual existence separate from the sun. Meaning you're looking at it and you're like, wow, the light is shining. The light is shining. You know what the light is? It's the sun. It's not light. We call it light. But it's really sun. In the sun, you wouldn't call it light. It's just sun. When it travels a far distance, you say, oh, it's light. It's sunlight. You know what sunlight is? Sun. It doesn't have its own identity, really. And here, let's continue. Here, on earth, the term yesh, existence, can truly be applied to it. Whereas when it is in its source, in the body of the sun, the term yesh, existence, cannot be applied to it at all. And it can only be called non-existent relative to the sun itself. There it is indeed not and absolutely non-existent, for there only its source, the body of the sun, gives light, and there's nothing besides it, i.e. besides the sun itself. Is the parable clear, or is it a little bit?
No,
It's not clear.
not for me.
Okay, let me shed some light.
Can I just go back to the beginning? You said when you bring down the screen, we exist when it's up. We don't. Does that mean when it's dark, we don't exist?
Wait, say it
Because
again?
there's no light shining on us?
The light here is using a parable to give ourselves a way of understanding it. And when we talk about divine light shining and creating, we're not meaning literal light, we mean metaphorical light. We can call it energy. So it's not that if it's dark, we don't exist. We exist. But we still exist as a projection from God. And therefore, he's asking the question, is a projected existence really real, or is it only apparently real? Meaning, just like a projection, would you say that 3D hologram, how real is it? Now you could say, well, it looks real, so it's real. But then I could challenge that and say, just because it looks real, does it really mean it's real? I mean, can it be that it's not really real, but it just looks real? And then what if we apply that to all of existence and to say that How real is what we see as reality, or even what we touch as reality? Just because we can touch it, does that really make it real? Because if it's only a projection, not literally, but conceptually, from God, if it's only a projection from God, then how real is that reality versus how much of it is just God? Meaning, how much of it is me versus God? Is there any me? Not enemy. Any me at all in this equation? What is the me that I call me? What is the you that I call you distinct from me? What is that? Okay, so these are all questions. But in the example he's given of the sun, he says, okay, look, you have the orb of the sun and the light that comes out. So let's say, I don't know, I don't have a board, so like I'm just going to have to draw in the air. So let's say you have the circle, right? The sun circle, as we're just going to depict it in cartoonish ways, right? And we'll put little spikes coming out of it. But we'll take one of those spikes and we'll extend it all the way to the end of our page, because that's all we have. We're not going to extend it actually further than that, because we have...
Look outside, there you go.
Nah, this is so much cooler that I could draw like this. On my invisible teleprompter.
The sun is right there.
It is literally right there. Oh, and it's shining. Good. Oh, and that's Rebbetzin Sharpstein. Very cool. All right, so here we go. So imagine you have the sun and you have a ray, and then you just extend the ray and put a little arrow, and it's going, and then it's landing, and it's landing, let's say, right over, just the sun kind of just diminished a little bit. And this is a mirrored thing, so we're like interrogating them and they can't even see it. So the sun is shining, so the light is shining right there, right on that little walk outside, or on the side of the wall. Great, so where did that come from? It's come from the sun. And in the sun, that light was nothing. It's not even light, it's sun. It's not even called light in the sun, it's just called sun. Yeah? Makes sense? So the question is, what makes it light? Why do we see it as a distinct reality? It's not. It's just sun. In which case we have to ask ourselves, are we us or are we source? Just looks like us, but it's really just source. That's the angle that he's going with this. Let's continue. Let's get back inside this text. The exact parallel. Wait, are we up to there?
Yeah.
The exact parallel to this illustration. And that's a strong statement that he says, exact parallel. I mean, a parable or a mushal is usually approximate. You're not going to get a perfect. He says exact parallel. That's the Alter Rebbe's words. It's pretty strong. The exact parallel to this illustration is the relationship between all created things and the divine flow of the life force from the breath of his mouth, which flows upon them and brings them into existence. And we have to be very careful here. Breath of his mouth is not physical. Light is not physical. Divine flow and life force is not physical. We're just using English terms that have some semblance of sense to our minds, but it just means that which is emanating from the source to bring life into existence. Let's talk about that relationship. God is their source, and they themselves are merely like a diffusing light and effulgence. There you go. That's a Scrabble word we didn't know we had. From the flow and spirit of God, which issues forth and becomes clothed in them and brings them from not into being, meaning that divine flow is what is sustaining life. Hence, their existence is, in actuality, nullified in relation to their source, just as the light of the sun is nullified and is considered not in complete nothingness, and is not even referred to as existing at all when it is in its source only beneath the heavens. Where its source is not present, can it be called existing, meaning only in that space when there's distance or apparent distance does it look like there's something other than source. But in reality, what is it if not source? In the same manner, the term yesh, existence, can be applied to all created things only as they appear to our corporeal eyes. Look at that. Existence is not real. It's only what we believe, what we perceive to be real. That's unbelievable. Let's continue. For we do not see nor comprehend at all the source, which is the Spirit of God that brings them into existence. And the implication is, if we did, we would realize that this is not real. That it's not really independent or separate, but it all is just manifestation of source. Therefore, it appears to our eyes that the materiality, grossness, and tangibility of the created things actually exist, just as the light of the sun appears to have actual existence when it is not within its source. So far he said the following. Just like there's a sun and the ray that emanates from the sun, that in a place other than the sun looks real, but really it's just the sun, so too there's God, the emanation of which are we, and here we look real, but if you really trace where we come from and what this even really is, it's all but an emanation of source, which means we're not really real. But in the last paragraph, he's going to take this and one-up it and really mess with our heads. Because he's going to say, unlike the example of the sun, where the ray actually extends from the sun, you know where we are? Mm-hmm. We're still in the source. And this is going to blow. If we really understood this, this would absolutely rock our world and blow our minds. But in the following, he says, in the following way, the illustration of the sun is apparently not completely identical with the object of comparison when it comes to creation. For in the illustration of the sun, the source, sun, is not present at all in the space of the universe, meaning the sun is in its space, and upon the earth, nor is it upon the earth where its light is seen as actually existing. Meaning there is a gap, a distance of tangible space between sun and where the ray is shining on planet Earth. Whereas, by contrast, all created things, you and I, are always within their source, and it's only that the source is not visible to our physical eyes.
That makes more sense than the
We're
illustration of the
We're not even outside the source.
sun.
We're still in God's mind. We're still in God's space.
Because the sun, you can block it.
There's still a gap.
Wear
A gap of space. We're not outside of God. We're inside of God. If so, he asks, why are they not nullified in their source? And when he says they, he means we. Why are we not nullified in our source? How do we even exist? How do we even exist? Because the ray of light in the sun doesn't exist as a ray of light. It's the sun. We call it the sun. We don't call it a ray. We only call it a ray when it's out of the sun, not in the sun. It's not like, oh, I see the ray of the sun. You know, you see the sun. So then if we're in the source still, and why is he so sure about that? Because there's nothing outside of God, including us. So if we're in the source, then how do we even have any possibility of distinction, self-awareness, differentiation? Where does it come from? If so, why are we not nullified in our source? And he ends chapter 3 with this. To understand this, some prefatory remarks are necessary. You know, there's a famous Hasidic adage that says you never end with a question, unless it's chapter 3 of Shara Yichud Emunah. Because typically the question, if you have a theological question, the question is, well, where is God? And you never want to end with where is God. But to end with where are we, it's okay. That's okay to end with. It's okay to end with a question of, do we really exist? Perfect. Does God really exist? You don't want to end with that question. But do we really exist? That's a perfect question to end with. My friends, today we did two things. Number one, we closed out chapter 2 of our text. I hope that 2s and 3s and chapter numbers are not getting confused.
Sorry, I don't understand.
So, and I hope that doesn't capture the, how do we shut that? I don't know how to shut that. I hope that doesn't capture the atmosphere in the room. I hope there's a little bit more clarity than has. I don't want to, she whose name shall not be mentioned, right? Who can, Papa, what's the point? No, she said, I don't understand. So I'm like, perfect. I said, I hope that's not what everyone's feeling in the room. I hope there's a little bit more clarity. But here's the thing. We did two things today. In our text, we concluded chapter 2. And we asked the question, which is greater, creation or redemption, creation or exodus? Fun. But then we got to the real new stuff, the real new material. And that is just thrilling and mind-blowing and mind-expanding and consciousness almost crushing in a good way. It's so amazing. And what is the big idea? Just recapping what we did. The big idea is fairly simple. It's a progression of ideas. Number one, God creates heaven and earth. Number two, creation is constant and ongoing. And if it wasn't, this would all disappear. Number 3, if it's constantly being created, then the only real reality is God. Number 4, it's like an extension of the divine that looks real, but is really the projection, is really only a projection of the source. And number 5, I think it's 5, we're actually still within the source. In which case, imagine an author who comes up with characters, and before even writing the book or creating the movie, is still thinking about the characters. And somehow those characters begin to have a self-awareness still in the mind of the author. And you would wonder, that's not even possible, because the only awareness is the awareness of the author, of the creator. So how do the characters, how are they self-aware? And how do they start viewing themselves as real if they're still in the mind of the author? So to understand this, he says, we need some prefatory remarks. Not today, next week. Next week we'll talk. For a week now, we can wonder, do we really exist? That's fine. That's fine. If we take ourselves, like I said before, a little less seriously this week, watch the magic happen. Get less upset, get less offended, get less triggered by things. You don't tell yourself, I don't really exist anyway. Like, I sort of exist, but not in the way that I think I exist. Like, am I really like this massive, big shot? Seriously. Who am I and what am I but a projection of divine energy? Still inside the projector, which is God. And you might think, well then, am I off the hook? Do I not? Because if it's all within God, then I think we're good, right? Then we could just relax this week. No, because the Torah does say, in the beginning God created heaven and earth. But how do we reconcile these two truths and two realities? Come back next week, where we talk about the name Elohim and how that begins to shape our perception of reality, even if it's not 100% real.
Adam and Hava ate from the tree of knowledge and evil. It's the first time they truly aware of themselves.
That is where some awareness begins. But even, I would say even before that, I mean, think about it. They existed as beings that saw themselves on some level as existing. And so where does that come from? I think this is something that scientists, philosophers have not really answered. Where does consciousness come from? How do you have an amalgam of cells, let's say biologically, that suddenly becomes aware or self-aware? I mean, that something exists biologically, okay, that seems to be a thing. But that it should become a thinking, intellectual, cognitive, conscious creature, that's something that's a little bit mysterious. Kabbalah struggles with it as well, but from a different angle. If we're all, I wouldn't even say ultimately, because ultimately sounds like, distant. If we're all essentially divine energy, so then what gives me my perception of self? And my perception that you're not me, that I'm me. It's funny because in child development, so you ask a little kid to draw a self-portrait, and it'll typically be like a circle, like a big head, with maybe some extremities, lines out of it. And then it just kind of develops from there. But even before that, the child has a difficulty sometimes differentiating itself from its mother, for example. So there is this idea in development of kind of creating that distinction and differentiation of I'm me, you are you, and that kind of separation. According to Kabbalah, the question would be, is that an asset or a liability? Is that moving more towards truth or away from truth? To see myself as distinct from you, is that becoming more in touch with reality or less in touch with reality? And I know that's the arc of human development, but is that more real or less real? These are things to think about this week. Next week, we'll pick up the conversation. We'll talk about Elohim. And I still will talk about the miracle of the air conditioning. which no one saw. Literally, no one saw coming. Just a few quick announcements. Dr. Max, I'm going to take your question in 1 second. But a few quick announcements before everybody, if you all have to leave. We have this event coming up that has no email has been sent out yet, but we're just announcing it now. It's called From Miniskirt to Hijab. This is a Jewish girl, a Jewish woman who grew up pre-revolutionary Iran, and she's going to speak about her experience growing up in a Jewish home in Tehran, and 1979, the revolution, how that changed her world, and not for the better. How that, what that meant for anti-Semitism, what it meant to be a Jewish woman in Iran, and in the years following. So she was there before the revolution, during the revolution, and after the revolution. And she wrote a book, a memoir of her life called From Miniskirt to Hijab, basically like having her world just totally turned upside down. Today she lives in Chicago. She's coming May 12th to speak, and everybody is invited. She'll be doing a lecture and, of course, a book signing as well for those that wish to get her book. She'll be signing the book there as well. So that's coming up. Check it out on the website. Thank you very much, Mrs. Cohen. Thank you, Tova. All right.
Excellent.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Dr. Maxey.
Kabbalah. So
Yeah.
is it next week when you start delving into Elohim?
Yes.
That it explains why we have the obligation of mitzvah? Because, I mean, if we're all part of the eminence of Yahweh, then what does it mean to even, quote, do a mitzvah? Because that suggests that I am separate from source, and source gets something from my doing
Excellent.
a separate thing. So
Excellent question.
Elohim comes in, and is that next week?
Excellent question. Yeah, that's all going to be part of next week. But you're right, to extend it to the question of the mitzvah, which I didn't mention today, but that's great. Meaning, if I view myself as an independent creature that I need to somehow climb toward and connect with my Creator, then I need tools to do that. But if I'm really still within the mind of the Creator and it's all oneness, then what are we even doing? Or maybe one could argue, not to jump the gun on this, because I think it's a good question, maybe one could argue that every mitzvah is a tool to open the consciousness and to realize the already oneness that's already existing, but in our perception is not always so clear. Maybe that's all right. So we'll talk about that next week. Next week was really more about the mechanics of how are we even apparently distinct, in our own minds. But within that, we'll connect it. And if I don't, please jump in again, and we'll make sure to connect it.
Well, I will tell you, as one who traverses between Atlanta and St. Simon's Island, that there are many uniformed law enforcement officers that seem to think I'm very distinct from them. They like watching me go by, and they want to know how fast I'm going. And sometimes I have little meet greet parties on the side of the road that really like to get to know you better, which suggests I'm very distinct. And so, yeah.
Very good, very good. Yeah. All right. To be continued. Always great to see you, Dr. Maxey. And Natan, I don't think I said hi. And Frank, California? Nice. All right. How's sunny California?
It's a little chilly today. 61.
All right.
I didn't move here for this.
Hold on. Are you a Flyers? You're a Flyers guy, right?
Die-hard Flyers, yeah.
So I'm a Penguins guy. I think we discussed it. So right now we can still be friends though. Don't worry. We can still be friends.
Well, it's all one, Rabbi, right?
It's what?
It's all one, right?
It's all one. Oh, exactly. It's all one. Exactly. It's all oneness. Very good. Mariana, great to see you.
Thank you. Thank you for a beautiful class.
Thank you very much. Everything's good? Family's good?
Yes, everybody are good. Thank you.
Amazing.
A lot of regards from Chile.
Oh, good. Give my love to everyone, and can't wait to see you guys soon.
Thank you.
Somewhere.
Yeah,
When you're back in the States, let me know. I'll meet up with you guys.
Yeah, it will be great. Thank you.
All right. Pleasure. Shavua Tov, everyone. Have a wonderful week.
Shavua Tov.
See you soon.